Okay, let's get back to kiddushin. Davishul b'lo olam. We're holding Samach Beis on Beis. Okay, we're holding at the bottom of Samach Beis on Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. So we've said that according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Samach Beis on Beis is of the opinion, Odom Makdav Shelo B'Olam, right? To a point. If the woman is pregnant, although the fetus doesn't exist as a child, and a man could only marry off his daughter when she's a child, when she's born. But if a man says, I want to marry your daughter when she will be born, if it's a female, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says if she's pregnant, we have discussed, is it 3 months pregnant, is she beyond conception, it's a valid marriage. But the person doesn't exist. So from here we see Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds, right? A person could transact something now to affect something which doesn't yet exist. What? 9-month fetus, the same thing. Until the fetus is 8, the same thing.
No. If you knew that it was going to be born, and
Still, if you hold Eino Demaktav Shel B'Olo, it's nothing. It means nothing. We're saying even earlier in the pregnancy, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, it's valid. No, we're differentiating. If it doesn't exist at all, then it's meaningless. No. When you marry, do you marry a fetus or you marry a person? Okay. So you're marrying, I'm doing an act now to affect a person, the person doesn't exist. Right? Correct? So as a person, is the person ba'olam or not ba'olam? Okay, good. And Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov says, if he gives money to the father, he says, I'm doing an act of marriage to be effective when your daughter will be born. It's effective. So you did an act, you're affecting something at the time that you're putting it into motion, that if it should come about as a female, the marriage should be a marriage when she will be born as a person. So that's Davish L'Olam. So we're saying within that, the variations. Right? So how do we differentiate? We differentiate it. Because we said, and with the argument between Rabbi Rav Yosef, to what degree does it have to be developed for the man to have sufficient intent? Right? That was the discussion until now. So Rashi over here says that, do we rule like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? So Rashi says, Uka Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov kaimelon di mishnoso kavanoki. Throughout the Mishnah, throughout Shas, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, the Gemara says, his mishnoso is kav v'noki. It's measured and it's pure. We always rule like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So Rashi is saying that we rule that if a man gives money to a father before the child is born, let's say it's hukah ubra, as long as she's noticeably pregnant, when the child would be born, the marriage is a marriage. That's Rashi. That's where Rashi is ruling. Tosas disagrees. No, that was an argument. That was an argument. It depends what pregnant means. Does pregnant mean after 3 months?
Okay, let's say 3 months. Is that the equivalent of a bud?
No, a bud. Shachas is more than a bud.
Okay, an immature fruit, whatever.
Before it can be considered a fruit, before it's considered a fruit, before it's considered a grain.
It would be identical taste.
Correct. So Rashi is, we rule this way.
And what would the hum mean and not to equate those cases would be?
Because we rule like the Chachamim. The Chachamim argue Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Ein odem makdav shelo b'olam.
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay, let's do Tosas. Before we discuss all this, let's do Tosas. Rashi says we rule like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Odem makdav shelo b'olam if it exists to some degree. Good. nothing to do with that. There's nothing to do with it. If it's a girl, it's a marriage. It's not a girl. Of course it's not a marriage. You can't marry a boy. Okay, let's see Tosus. So Tos at the end, bottom Tosus. Vinira. It's the end of the fourth line, where the lines get wider. The Avagav Daloch Reb Lezer ben Yaakov Ba'almo de Kavanoki, who, although throughout Shas, we normally rule like Reb Lezer ben Yaakov, you see Tosus. Where the lines get, the bottom Tosus, where the lines get wider, the end of the fourth line, the fifth line. Vinira. You have it, Ernie? The Avagav the Halochik Reb Lezer ben Yaakov Ba'almo. Although we normally rule like Reb Lezer ben Yaakov, generally, throughout Shas, why the Kavanoki? Because his Mishnah is measured and pure. This is the exception. This case, we do not rule like Reb Lezer ben Yaakov. Why? Which is not like Rashi. Not like Rashi. V'lav kekula tanoi, the Amri odamakdov shlobololo. And not like all the other Tanoim is. We said Remeir, Rebbe. We don't rule like all of them. Even though Rashi says we do. He says this is the exception. He'll accept why? The plig bav mitzio, because we find there's an argument bav mitzio. Rav Nachman Rav Huna. The moche peris dekel lechavero. A person wants to sell a future yield of a tree. Futures. Rav Huna Amar, Rav Huna says, Ach lebo bo leolam yochel lachzer bo. I transact them selling future yields, and the one who was involved in the transaction wants to renege, whether it's the seller or the buyer, before the fruit actually came into existence. Okay? So it says, what about Mishbol Olam? What about once the fruits came into existence? And Yochel Rav Huna says, you want to renege, you want to retract before, you can. Of course, it didn't take effect yet. But once the fruits come into existence, you can't retract any longer, because the original transaction affected the fruits when they come into being. Whatever fruits are, whatever stage. That's not relevant. Let's say it's a full fruit. When the fruit is on the tree, then it's your. Okay? Rav Huna says you cannot retract any longer. Wait.
Retraction means that they both agree
Could we learn Tosus? Okay, let's state the case, the position. Why can't you retract once the fruit comes into existence? Because the original act affected what exists now. Not they both. This is Rav Huna speaking. Rav Huna says, I'm selling you a future yield. The yield doesn't exist. It's 2017. Until 2016, there's no bud, there's nothing. The seller, the buyer wants to retract, they could retract. I didn't say anything. Let's say fact, you both could retract. Why? Because nothing has been affected yet. Before anything's been affected, you can retract. That's Rav Huna. But once the fruit comes into being, whatever stage that is, it's been transferred. The original action affected whatever the effect was meant to be. Therefore, the seller cannot retract, and the buyer can't retract. That's Rav Huna. But it's good. Rav Huna holds Adam Makdav Shalbol Olam. Because if your opinion ain't Adam Makdav Shalbol Olam, you can't affect something which doesn't exist, even when it comes into existence. The original action is not called an act of transfer. It's nothing. Right?
nothing to retract.
It's like the one says, if you want to marry a fetus, when the fetus becomes a child, according to, if you hold not like Reb Lezer ben Yaakov, what's the halacha? Einu b'kodeshes. Okay? Rav Nachman Oma afil bo leolam yochel lachzer bo. Rav Nachman says, even after the fruits come into being, the seller and the buyer could retract. Why? They know the makdav shel bo leolam. Because the original transaction has no value, has no validity. V'zeh mochron kodim shebo leolam. When was the act of transfer done between the buyer and the seller? Before they existed. Therefore, even when the fruit comes into being, it's meaningless. Right? You want to transact it, you need a new act of transaction. Okay? And when you have an argument with Rav Huna, Rav Nachman, v'halocha Rav Nachman b'dini. Whenever there's an argument with Rav Nachman and Rav Huna, we rule like Rav Huna regarding monetary laws. And what does Rav Nachman say? Even when the fruits come into being, it's nothing. Vim Kain, so we see clearly, ein halocha Reb Elazar and Yaakov. For whatever reason, Rav Nachman does not rules that it's not valid, even after the fruits come in to being. So it's clear Rav Nachman holds what? He does not rule like Reb Elazar and Yaakov. Because according to Reb Elazar and Yaakov, there it's even more extreme. There was saying that what? Even though you could differentiate, you can make a differentiation. You know what the differentiation is? Reb Elazar and Yaakov, we said, he's of the opinion that Odom Makdav Shabbat Olam, something has to exist to a degree. You minimally have to have a fetus. What about before she even conceives? Even Reb Elazar and Yaakov agrees, it's nothing. The argument there between Rav Nachman and Rav Huna speaking, I'm selling a yield where the yield doesn't exist yet, right? So that's like preconception. We show from the Gemara, preconception, even Reb Elazar and Yaakov agrees. What am I selling? I'm not selling you the tree. But can I ask you a question? The woman will conceive. Wait a second. Let's say she has to be pregnant 3 months. Right? She has to be pregnant 3 months. She's already conceived. According to Reb Elazar and Yaakov, is the kiddushin a kiddushin? No, we said no. Minimally, you need hukah rubra. She has to be showing. But even so, she's already conceived. 9 months later, there's going to be a child. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says in that case, Eina Mukadeshes. If she wasn't showing, although she conceived already. So why is that different than the tree, which ultimately is going to give its yield? Oh, now you hear it. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. That's what you have to first hear before we speak. If everybody hears before they speak, we'll save a lot of time. Okay. Okay. So let's try to equate the cases. So if that's the case, it's not so difficult. Maybe we do rule like Reb Elazar ben Yaakov. The argument of Huna, Rav Nachman, and Bav Metzia is a much more extreme case. There, nothing exists. You're transacting something. It's 2015. I'm selling you the yield of 2017. There, Rav Huna and Rav Nachman argue when it actually comes into being, the original transaction doesn't have any value. Rav Nachman says it has no value. Okay, according to what we said here, Reb Elazar ben Yaakov agrees to this. So if that's the case, I could rule like Reb Elazar ben Yaakov, and yet rule that it's not a valid transfer regarding that case. Right? No, because there is, because Rameir holds this way. Rameir, but it's not Reb Elazar ben Yaakov. We say Reb Elazar ben Yaakov Mishnah so Kavanoki. Reb Elazar ben Yaakov, because his Mishnah is always pure and measured, that's what we rule like him, not like Rameir. Rameir, we don't rule like necessarily like Rameir. That halacha of selling a future yield when nothing exists, that's Rameir's position. Rameir, we're going to have a Mishnah later. A man marries a woman, she hasn't even converted yet, or she hasn't been emancipated yet, and he gives her the marriage, gives her something of value now. After you will be emancipated, after you will be converted. Rameir says mukadeshes. Rameir says she's married. Why? But it hasn't yet come into being, because Rameir holds Odom Makdav Shabbat Olam. He's of the opinion that a person could actually affect something which there's no trace of its existence in advance. That's Rameir. It's logic. Logic. Why does it sound logical? If we both agree. Okay, they're arguing, again, as we explained, what determines whether the transaction has any value? Everything's intent. Rameir holds is of everything's intent. Whether it exists or not, that to Rameir is irrelevant. The question is, if something doesn't exist and there's sufficient intent from both parties, that's sufficient to give value to the transaction. To be effective when it does. If it never comes to existence, of course it's nothing. That's sufficient to give value that is considered a transaction to affect something when it happens. That's Rameir's opinion.
A man puts up a house for sale, and he's a sincere
Seller.
seller of the house. And a man says, when I buy this house, I'm going to give it to you, I'm going to rent it to you, I'm going to...
And he gives him the deed now to take effect when he buys
But
it.
the man who says, when I buy the house, has no contract to buy the house.
But it's for sale.
It's for sale.
Let's say he says if. If I should...
No, he says when.
When is when? If. Well, you can't sell something unless you buy it.
Yeah.
Same thing.
It's
Same thing.
meaningless.
No, I gave you. It's not meaningless. According to Rameir, that's
When I buy the house,
that's not meaningless.
because how does he know he's even going to be...
No. So let's let's be more specific. If I buy this house, no. Let's talk about if. No, there's difference when and if. Okay, but let's say it says if the house he hasn't bought it yet. If I buy the house, I will sell you that house, and this is the deed for that transfer when I buy it. No, if I buy it, this is the deed when I buy it. No, it's if and when. It's both.
I'm trying to liken this to the case of a man who's selling his daughter into marriage.
No, that's better than this. That's better than buying the house. Because here, it's already in motion. It's evolving. It's just a question of time before it's going to happen. By the house, there's nothing in motion. Various parties have to do certain things to make it happen.
It's too much out of the man's control.
Yes, sir, that's good. Rameir holds it does not be in your control. According to Rameir, it does not be in your control. Everything is dependent on intent. A person that could have sufficient intent in that case to give value to the transaction that it should be considered an act to bring about a transaction. That's Rameir.
In my case with the house here, the man doesn't know that he'll be the...
Okay, let's talk about the case of emancipation. When your master will emancipate you, this act of marriage should take effect. She's not even Jewish yet. When you convert, I will marry you. She hasn't converted yet. We'll see. It's the next Mishnah. That's Rameir's position.
But as we've been going right now, there's too many things out of his control. He cannot affect
Rameir holds it. You don't have to. You don't even set a control doesn't make a difference. Even though there's sufficient intent to give it credibility and value. That's Rameir's position. Reb Lezer ben Yaakov argues. So we see the variations in Davar Shabbat Olam. Reb Lezer ben Yaakov said minimally there has to be something in existence which ultimately will come to fruition. Rameir says no, there's nothing. Nothing even exists. No, definitely not. Not. Only if it's reached a certain level of development. Less than that, no. Yeah, I understand that. It means within the realm, the moral differentiate, within the realm of non-existent, they concur. I mean, Rameir would agree with the fetus. No, which means Reb Lezer ben Yaakov may not concur with Rameir, but Rameir will concur with Reb Lezer ben Yaakov. I mean, there's a common case where they all agree that it's effective, that it's valid. He's more extreme. No question. The Gemara will say that. No, but it's still not.
It's going to happen. Pregnancy, you don't know if it's going to happen.
Right, correct.
Does anyone make that differentiation?
Yes. There's the word Mitzvah, that's Avid Osi. There's an opinion in Rameir. Rameir only says Peres Dekel, which is Avid Osi. So that means if it's pre-pregnancy, even Rameir agrees it's nothing. So it's not as extreme. Rameir is not as extreme as you think. Rameir is speaking specifically by the yields. A yield is perennial, it's year in, year out. It will happen, it's just a question of time. Pregnancy, who said she'll become pregnant? Who said the Bezdin will agree to convert her? I know, I understand that, What about if he's the master? He's emancipating her. And she agrees in advance, I agree to marry you. Okay, we'll see all the cases. So the variations of this. We will continue.